Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I'm going to be your expedition guide today as we grab our compasses, unroll our maps, and really chart out the data behind one of humanity's oldest and, frankly, most recognizable stories. We are going to explore the geographical, scientific, and theological landscapes that surround the biblical account of the Great Flood. So let's dive right into this massive question. Did a giant wooden vessel actually survive a worldwide deluge? And is it possible its fossilized remains are resting up in the mountains of eastern Turkey right now? Well, to find out, we're starting an expedition to see exactly what our sources, from biblical archaeologists to creationist geologists and scientific skeptics, actually have to say about the evidence. Part 1. The Ancient Blueprint. Let's start our journey by looking at the ancient origins and the massive scale of the original design. The book of Genesis describes a pretty colossal vessel. We're talking roughly 450 feet long and 75 feet wide. To put that into perspective, that's about 1.5 football fields in length. According to the text, this massive structure was designed specifically to save the patriarch Noah, his family, and representations of the world's animals from a global deluge that was intended to cleanse the earth of human wickedness. You know, what's really fascinating is that the flood narrative isn't just an isolated story. It's actually deeply embedded in human history, popping up in around 200 different accounts all across the globe. For instance, Irving Finkel, a curator at the British Museum, discovered a Babylonian cuneiform tablet that details a precursor to the biblical Ark story. It describes a giant kufa, which is this unusually large, round coracle boat. So the cultural footprint of a survival vessel like this is incredibly ancient and widespread. Part 2. Searching for the Ark. Now, let's navigate from ancient texts to the physical search for this vessel, focusing our binoculars specifically on the mountains of Turkey. Explorers have been searching the Mount Ararat region for decades. The Durpanar site in eastern Turkey in particular has a really wild modern history. It all started back in 1959 when a Turkish captain named Durpanar photographed this massive boat-shaped formation from the air. Throughout the 1980s, explorers like Ron Wyatt and David Falsold heavily promoted the site, and they even brought in some early radar equipment. Fast forward to recently, in 2014, deep penetration electrical resistivity tomography, or ERT scans, were conducted, followed by ground-penetrating radar surveys in 2019. The researchers doing this work genuinely believe they found the final resting place of the Ark. So what exactly are they finding out there? Well, proponents of the site highlight a treasure trove of artifacts that they argue proves this specific area has been venerated for thousands of years. We're talking enormous drogue stones, basically massive ancient anchors found 5,300 feet above sea level, some even bearing carved crosses from early Christians and Crusaders. They also point to local place names, like the Village of the Eight, ancient corrals, fossilized sea life at incredibly high elevations, and even the footprint of a massive sarcophagus that some believe belonged to Noah's unusually tall wife. But as we look closer, we hit a major fork in the road here, even among believers. Proponents claim that recent radar and ERT scans reveal parallel lines and angular internal iron structures that perfectly match the biblical dimensions of a man-made ship. But on the flip side, creationist geologists at Answers in Genesis absolutely disagree. Dr. Andrew Snelling and others argue that the site is a complete geological freak of nature. They state it's just a large block of Miocene limestone sitting in a mudflow, and that those scan lines are simply natural jointing, layering, and water dissolution within the rock itself. Plus, they point out that it sits in a valley on a volcano that erupted as recently as 1840, not on the highest peaks like Genesis implies. Part 3. The Scientific Hurdles. Finding a boat shape is one thing, but let's shift from the physical geography to the logistical landscape, charting out the intense scientific scrutiny of the voyage itself. Obviously, the biggest logistical hurdle is the cargo. How in the world do you fit millions of species on one wooden boat? Answers in Genesis tackles this using the concept of kinds. They argue Noah didn't actually need to bring 2 of every single modern species, but rather representatives of broader taxonomic families or genera. From these original kinds, which, by the way, they explicitly state would have included dinosaurs since they were created alongside other land animals, all modern diversity later adapted and branched out. This concept drastically reduces the Ark's passenger list down to a much more manageable 16,000 animals. But when you put these logistical defenses directly up against scientific skeptics like the National Center for Science Education, a really fascinating debate emerges.
Take waterproofing. Creationists cite advanced ancient tech using pitch. Skeptics counter that pitch is a hydrocarbon formed by the flood itself, meaning Noah couldn't have even harvested it yet. When it comes to gathering animals, creationists suggest God-given migration instincts, while skeptics point out impossible ecological barriers. How does a penguin make it across a desert, right? Plant survival and pathogens present equally tough hurdles. The idea of low-humidity seed storage is met with the reality of damp rot. And if all parasites survived on the Ark, skeptics argue they would have quickly killed off their sole surviving host animals.
The skeptics essentially sum up their position with this thought from philosopher David Hume. They argue that to validate this biblical story, it requires constant, unexplainable miracles at literally every single turn, stepping completely outside the known laws of nature. To them, the physical evidence of ecology, genetics, and stratigraphy just simply does not support the voyage.
Part 4. Surviving the voyage. Let's unpack the staggering logistics of survival for the 8 human passengers and those thousands of animals trapped inside for 371 days.
Just imagine the daily chore chart. How did 8 people feed and clean up after 16,000 animals for over a year? Creationist researchers suggest that God may have triggered hibernation instincts, which are actually quite common for many species under extreme stress. Combined with advanced ancient plumbing, gravity-fed water systems, and animal-powered machines, they argue it was a manageable ecosystem. Skeptics, on the other hand, entirely rejects this. They point out that the sheer volume of toxic manure and highly specialized dietary needs would quickly turn a poorly ventilated hull into a completely unsurvivable toxic environment. Part 5. The Better Ark. Finally, let's pull our perspective back and chart the theological waters to understand why this ancient blueprint still matters so deeply to billions today. Beyond all the intense debates over gopher wood, pitch, and radar scans, scholars and theologians view the Ark as a profound narrative. According to sources like the Gospel Coalition, treating the Ark as just a cute boat full of zoo animals captained by a jolly old man completely misses the point. It's deeply understood as a severe warning against human wickedness, juxtaposed with an immense celebration of divine mercy. For many modern Christians, the story's ultimate value isn't purely historical, it's highly prophetic. The Gospel Coalition points out that the Ark points directly to their faith. Just as the Ark saved Noah's family from the chaos of the floodwaters, they view Jesus as the ultimate, better Ark of salvation, designed to permanently conquer the chaos of sin. So, as we conclude our great expedition today, I want to leave you with this final thought to explore on your own map. Does the ultimate value of the Ark lie in finding its fossilized timbers buried under the limestone and mud of the Ararat Mountains? Or does its true power lie in the enduring blueprint it has left on human history, scientific debate, and deeply held faith? Whether you see it as a literal history requiring divine miracles, a profound allegory, or an undiscovered mystery, there is absolutely no denying that the Ark continues to navigate and shape our imaginations today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll see you on the next one.